it's me again, Russell T. Davis. I was just going to mention that, I'm about to leave, and I think David's going to leave as well. So, we're just going to finish our own little specials, and I'm going to go and find my successor, if that's all right with you. Wait, you're leaving? Well, yeah, I figured I was going to have to leave at some point. Oh, well, forget your successor. I guess we're just going to cancel the show. Wait, what? Stephen, run! Yeah, it's no secret that the BBC kind of nearly panicked and gave up on Doctor Who entirely at the end of the RTD era. They expected some kind of massive drop-off with the changeover of the production team, and yeah, we are kind of lucky that that didn't happen. It's weird. It was only back for like 5 years, and suddenly it was nearly cancelled all over again, which is crazy to think about. However, what the actual BBC ended up with was better than what they could have ever imagined with the changeover at hand. Stephen Moffat wanted an older actor to kind of contrast with what David had been, this young, refreshing face, and he wanted someone who was older, more kind of a classic style Doctor, and he ended up casting the youngest Doctor to this day in Matt Smith, and I find that amazing because it just shows how big an impression Matt Smith left on Stephen Moffat. He, came in and performed as an old man, and when you think of his Doctor, you don't think of him as the youngest Doctor in terms of his performance. His performance is that of an ancient Time Lord, and he pulls it off perfectly. Better than most, I would argue. Anyway, with this video, what I'm going to do is something which I've done twice already with Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant, and I am going to do an overview of the best and the worst of the Matt Smith era. So, to start us off, I'm going to start off with the worst list. So, the first episode that I'm going to do on the worst list is Let's Kill Hitler, and I'm sorry, it is just like, the thing is, you've heard me talk about the Matt Smith era before, so you knew it was inevitable that... I'm doing these in chronological order, by the way, so I can just clarify right now, there is not a single Series 5 episode on the worst list, and I've started in mid-Series 6. This is literally a point, you can mark this point, this is the point where I start to lose faith in the show. And yeah, it's safe to say, it kind of just... my confidence in the show just drags from this point onwards. But Let's Kill Hitler, in terms of an idea, the Doctor being in Nazi Germany and something, and Hitler being in an episode, it's kind of a really interesting idea, something you could explore, and Hitler's in it for 5 seconds, they kind of ignore that, and I've heard people say, well, that's the point of it, but like, no, you shouldn't be making a point, try and make an episode. It just feels like a mess. It feels like such an absolute mess of an episode, because it's all about kind of River's development in terms of becoming River from Melody, and you introduce this new character called Mel's, who's supposed to have been Amy and Rory's friend, and we've never seen her before, and we act like we have seen her before, so we show all of her character arc in like quick flashback for 2 minutes. That's not gonna help. That just kind of feels rushed and messy, and I'm someone who is in touch with the story at hand, and I'm kind of a bit annoyed, and then someone who doesn't understand the story is going to be completely lost, because they're being introduced with like 5 characters at once and they just don't get it. I really don't like it. I really hate this story. The Tessellect is a fun idea, but it's just one of a billion of like 5 things in this episode which is all over. You then have the scene where River's trying to kill the Doctor, and the Doctor keeps kind of guessing what she's doing before it happens, and it kind of feels like, again, he wrote a Sherlock script and then accidentally put it into a Doctor Who episode and then switched it over, which I'm not going to have a go at Stephen for. It's insane he was show running 2 BBC top dramas at the same time. He was definitely overworking himself, for sure. But yeah, Let's Kill Hitler for me is just, I don't know, I just hate it. And I'm going to say that, I hate this episode. I had to re-watch it for random reviews, which I think might have a comeback soon, or be replaced by something. But yeah, I really didn't like having to re-watch it. I despise that episode. And if you want to see more of what I thought about it, go and watch that review. I'll link it up here. Next on the worst list, it's Closing Time, which of course featured the very well-known James Corden. Yeah, he's not exactly a liked figure nowadays, is he? But with Closing Time, I just think... I remember watching Doctor Who at the time, and I've always loved the Sidemen. Always have, always will. And we hadn't seen them in the Matt Smith era at that point. Like, not really. We'd seen them in, like, Pandorica Opens, and they'd come in and had, like, a little cameo, but, like, they hadn't properly been in the show. Do you know what I mean? They hadn't had their own story since RTD. And, then you get this, and it just is just really, really just crap. I'm sorry, it's like, oh, Sidemen invade! a shopping centre. I'm like, oh god, it's like I generally think Dimensions in Time is like better than this. Clearly, I just despise this, and you know, I don't hate the Lodger. I don't hate it. I think it's okay. It's not amazing. It's very average. It's just an okay Doctor Who story. It's very by numbers. Let's put this in between the high budget ones. But if you're going to bring back a character from Series 5, who the hell picked that? I do not want Craig Owens back. Not just because he's James Gordon, but the character himself is not inherently interesting. Because he's such an... I know people will say, well, it's nice to have ordinary people in Doctor Who. Yeah, I know. The companion as the audience surrogate. But I know that's why he's there. He's to replace the companion because, you know, the point is he's ditched the Ponds. But I'd love Smith on his own for an episode. Because you know how with Tennant, there were times where he would be left on his own and it would show he would be worse on his own. We never actually get that with Smith because whenever someone leaves, he just looks to someone instantly. Whereas Tennant would kind of go, oh no, this person died. I'm going to have 2 episodes on my own and then realise I need a companion. Like, I like that. I kind of wanted that. And I just really annoys me. All the jokes about the baby just don't land for me. I think it's just my age going into this. I was just kind of going into, what was it? So it was 2011. So I was not far from turning like 10. And I was like a year away from going into secondary school. And I like just thought, oh, should I watch this childish stuff? And the thing is, Doctor Who, I think, got more childish around this time, and I was becoming aware of it, and I was like, am I too old for Doctor Who? Is that why I'm finding it childish? I'm like, no, it's not. You aren't getting older than the show is getting younger than you. That was the issue. You know, the show was just kind of it just felt like it was getting too kiddie, and it wasn't hitting for me. And the whole, you know, destroying the Cyberman with love thing is extremely stupid. I'm sorry, it's so stupid. But yeah, that's all I've got to say about Closing Time. Next on the worst list, I'm going to be talking about the Crimson Horror. And I know maybe this doesn't count as like a Doctor Live. It's not really, because Doctor shows up like halfway through. And I'm going to be honest, it's weird that I'm talking about this episode, because I have never rewatched this. I watched it the once when it aired in 2013, and I have never watched it since. Like, I'm not a fan of the Paternoster Gang. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm not a fan of them. I'm not a fan of Strax. I'm not a fan of Astra. Jenny, I like these characters when they first show up in Good Man Goes to War. Like, it's interesting when they're first introduced. But when they become this funky, cool comedy Victorian gang, I just kind of don't like them. It just felt like they were trying to force a kind of spin-off, and I really didn't want that. Because the jokes are very repetitive of Strax, and I just really don't like it. And also in this episode, you have one of the worst Doctor moments, I think. And this is some sort of thing with Matt Smith's character towards the end of his era. He just becomes a bit, and I don't want to say it, he just gives big vibes. I'm just saying, he gives massive vibes. I don't know why. Just very weird approach. Like, you know, he snogs Jenny out of nowhere, a character which he knows is a lesbian, and I'm just like, this is a bit weird. And she slaps him, like, too right, she did. Like, it's just a bit weird. I'm like, because Matt Smith, his Doctor just felt like the most asexual, weirded out Doctor, which is why it's also weird that he's the one who gets paired up with River Song. Because I'm like, no, this is the Doctor which kind of doesn't, you know, chucks out wine and tries to force acting childish, but really is ancient on the inside, you know. But he doesn't, and you know, doesn't know how to act around women, and yet he's the one who ends up being married to River Song. It feels less believable, I'd say. I don't want to be rude, but that is the case for me. And, you know, and that's why it's so weird when you get moments like that in Crimson Horror. I mean, the plot itself, I just think it's a bit weird, the whole thing, and, focusing an episode on them just felt kind of wrong. And also, it's Series 7B, and Clara is just at her worst in this era. I'm not saying I dislike Clara, I'm saying I dislike Series 7B Clara. I'm telling you, Series 7B Clara and Clara, after the time of the Doctor, are 2 different characters. They are not the same. They are not the same character. Day of the Doctor and Time of the Doctor are like the halfway point between these 2 characters. Because she gets better, but she's still like Series 7E. You know what I mean? It feels like as soon as Series 7B ends and Time of the Doctor ends, she'll never reference the whole Impossible Girl thing ever again. And I love that. You know, as soon as she gets stopped being called the Impossible Girl, she just becomes a better character because she's no longer attached to this series arc, which she shouldn't be. She should be her own character with her own agency. That's what she should be. you know, if I put the story short, yeah. I hate this story, I despise it, and I've never rewatched it for a good reason, and you can't make me. Unless if I get a video out of it. Next on the worst list, and you know, the 4th episode I'm going to put here, it's Nightmare in Silver. Now, this is so insane because you had Neil Gaiman writing Doctor Who. He'd already written in the previous series with The Doctor's Wife, which was a pretty big hit. A lot of people loved that story. And you brought him back to write a Cyberman story, introducing them with a new look. You think, how can this go wrong? You're giving someone who, like, wrote Good Omens, The Sandman. He's a very... And, you know, he also wrote, Coraline. You know, he's a brilliant author. And you've given him this creative control in Doctor Who, and you end up with, God, probably one of my least favourite Cyberman stories of all time. I'm being completely honest. And I think he wanted it to be a 2-parter, maybe that would have made it better, but I just hate how much power the Cybermen have, and then the fact that they get destroyed so, like, in the way they are, because it just, okay, fine, they have to, like, destroy a whole planet. Which I guess makes it easy, but the fact that they've got, like, super speed and they can detach themselves, like, at this point they aren't Cybermen anymore. At this point they are just robots with their Iron Man suity kind of thing. It's probably my least favourite Cyberman design, and I'll do a video like that at some point soon. But it probably is down there, and yeah, it just really doesn't do it for me because they're just too sleek. They're almost so humanoid that their suit is so skinny. It's like, where's the space for the human remains? I don't believe that there is any at this point, you know? Whereas with the more bulky Cyberman suits, I believe there's a person inside of it. And this one, I'm like, no, this is metal all the way through. That's what the vibe it gives me. And that inherently just kind of goes against what the Cybermen are. And I hate Cyberman stories which almost forget what the Cybermen are. Because are there any conversions in this story? Really? No, not proper conversions. You have conversions into cyber controller and cyber planners and stuff, and, you know, the kids, you know, being like put into like homes and stuff as they're walking. No proper conversions, you know, which is what the Cybermen are about. It's all about body horror, and we don't get to see that, and that's what I despise about it. And yeah, it's got to go down in my ratings this episode. It's just, you know, it again, you know, 2 Cyberman stories make it here because they are ruining one of my favourite monsters, if not my favourite, and, you know, it just really, really upsets me. Finally, the last episode on this list. I have just realised I haven't done them in chronological order, because this episode is in Series 7B a lot earlier than the others. It is The Rings of Akhaten. I can't tell you what happened in this episode when I first watched it. I just, yeah, I was really ill when it happened. I'm actually ill right now. I don't know if you noticed. I'm sniffling a lot, but yeah. I remember being ill, and then Doctor Who being on, I went, oh, good, Doctor Who's on, that'll cheer me up. And then I watched this, and I thought, that's an hour of my life I'm never going to get back. 45 minutes, you know. But the child acting is not awful. That's not what I'm going to complain about. A lot of people always complain about child acting. I won't always. Anyway, talking about The Rings of Akhaten, I don't really like Clara in this at all. I think her performance is it's stale. There's not much there. It feels like I'm watching an actor perform, not watching a character. She doesn't feel like a character with too many layers, which she feels like she does have later on. She doesn't feel as real as she does later on, and that is a problem which she has in Series 7B. She's just way too smiley for it to be believable, way too jumpy, and yeah, and then later on she becomes this more sterner, better character, which I prefer. From Day of the Doctor onwards, she improves. And Day of the Doctor, man, I'm just going to say it's not going to go on the best list because I'm not counting it as a Matt Smith era episode, purely because, you know, it benefits a lot off, you know, other eras. But finally, with Rings of Akhaten, you know, I get it's like a story that talks about like religion and worship and stuff, but it just, you know, I just hate it because it just feels so bland in my mind. It just feels like that, and that speech at the end feels like it's trying to force a moment to happen. It doesn't feel like a naturally occurring moment. It's like, oh God, we should do like a big monologue, shouldn't we? Yeah, we should, and it just doesn't work for me. It really doesn't work. Now, talking about the best list, this is going to be a lot more fun, and I'm going to make sure I try and do this one in chronological order, like I usually do. And this is going to be easy because his first episode is on there. So the first episode I'm going to talk about is obviously the 11th hour, and it is just such an amazing episode. It's probably one of the best opening episodes for a Doctor. It's one of the best opening episodes for a series. It is just brilliant. It's a whole hour long and it is fantastic. The way it refreshes the show immediately with the new Doctor. It feels so fresh and new, introducing the new companion with a brand new concept of him meeting her as a child and then, you know, forcing her to wait 12 or maybe 14 years in the end is a really cool idea from Moffat. The monster itself, like the Atraxi, aren't exactly that memorable, but they work in the concept of the episode and Prisoner Zero, you know. When you compare that to maybe like Tim Shaw or something, yeah, in Jodie's first episode, it's kind of the same level of like memorability, how memorable they are. But you know, one really works in their episode and one kind of just doesn't. And I always feel like Tim Shaw shouldn't have come back, and maybe that would have helped. But I mean, this episode is so clear of the woman who fell to Earth, so that doesn't even matter. But you know, you've got him coming back, and you slowly strip him of his abilities. He loses the Sonic. The TARDIS has gone for pretty much the whole episode to use, and you know he only has like 20 minutes to save the world when he realizes. And the moment where he becomes the Doctor, you know, is just fantastic. The moment where he, you know, announces to the Atraxi, "I am the Doctor," that is just one of the best Doctor moments ever. Like, that is one way to announce yourself in the role. It is fantastic. I remember watching that as a kid, and obviously I grew up with Tennant, so I was so emotionally connected to Tennant, and I felt sad that he'd gone, and I almost didn't like Smith because of it. And then I was watching this episode, and when he did that, I went, yeah, he's cool. This guy is the Doctor. This guy is 100% the Doctor, and I'm really excited to see what's coming. And that's how I felt throughout the whole of Series 5 before, obviously, if you've seen my worst list, It's Sunny went a bit sour. But yeah, this is such a great opening episode for a Doctor. Is it the best opening episode a Doctor's ever had? Oh God, it's like, it's in between, for me, this, Spearhead from Space, and maybe Power of the Daleks for me. But yeah, it's such a great way to announce yourself in a role, and it's fantastic. And Smith, you know, did so much work for this, and he just impressed amazingly in this. And I love that he bumped into Capaldi the day after, and Capaldi just bumped into him and said, "Oh my God, you're amazing. I really liked you in Doctor Who." And then obviously he becomes the next Doctor. I love that story. Next on the best list, I'm going to be talking about Amy's Choice. Now, Amy's Choice, I love, and I think it's a really underrated story. Obviously, you've got like, the Dream Lord, and you know, Amy, Rory, and the Doctor all in two dreams together. And I think it's a really interesting concept for a story because it kind of fixes you into the idea that there are two dreams and the Dream Lord's in control so much that you get lost in the episode, and at the end it pulls the wool over your eyes and goes, actually, they're both dreams. Which is a twist maybe if you look back you could think, you know, because neither of these episodes kind of feel real, but because it's Doctor Who, it kind of goes, no, anything could happen, you know, maybe. Both these concepts seem silly, but maybe it is the way these episodes are happening. And, you know, with the reveal that the Dream Lord is the Doctor, is an interesting idea, and I do like exploring darker facets of the Doctor's character, which is another thing this episode has for itself. Using that to explore the dynamics between Amy and the Doctor, and Amy and Rory, is so interesting because it shows from the Doctor's perspective he definitely realises she is conflicted over her preferences towards the Doctor and Rory because the Dream Lord brings it up and forces her to choose. It shows the Doctor wants her to be with Rory, you know, because of what happens earlier in that series in Flesh and Stone, where she kind of jumps towards him and you know, makes a move on him, and it's definitely on his mind, and it's just fantastic. And the way it forces her to kill herself, like the episode itself, like the Dream Lord, well, not the Dream Lord doesn't, the Dream Lord doesn't force her to kill herself, but like the episode itself puts her in a situation where she has to kill herself to end up back with Rory, and that is amazing because it kind of is just putting her in a moment of pure sacrifice and massive emotional release, getting and earning Rory back. Even though that all is in a dream, it's amazing. And yeah, that really does kind of salvage that kind of relationship there. Sure, Rory dies in the next episode, but this is a big moment, you know, obviously, and I love this story. I love it. Next on the best list, I'm going to be talking about Vincent and the Doctor. I think this story is beautiful. It is perfect. It's written by the brilliant Richard Curtis, who did, Four Weddings and a Funeral, Love Actually, which is my favourite Christmas movie, by the way, and he also did About Time, which is a fantastic film as well. You need to go check that one out as well. But he wrote Doctor Who just one time with Vincent and the Doctor, and it is a beautiful story about, mental health and exploring that through Vincent van Gogh and the monster itself. I've heard people complain about the monster, but the monster is so crucial to this episode because it represents the metaphor. It's a metaphor for depression in that it's an invisible monster which only you can face. It's a monster which the Doctor can, and it's also the fact that the Doctor doesn't defeat the monster, Vincent does. It's the fact that the Doctor can save people, he can save whatever, races and stuff, but he can't save Vincent van Gogh from his own torment, because sometimes mental health is too much. Sometimes it is. But we've got to do our best to kind of help those who can. But it's a complex issue, and this episode is it's beautiful, and the performance from I don't know the actor, but who plays Vincent van Gogh is amazing. The performance of that character is fantastic. It's just beautiful the way at some point he's just completely aggressive, and sometimes he's calm as possible, and the way it also demonstrates and shows the historical accuracy of how Vincent van Gogh was treated while living in Provence, in that he was kind of mocked and people kind of took the mick out of his own art when he's gone on to be known as this amazing artist, amazingly skilled man who dealt with a lot of torment, and it's he cut his own ear off for Christ's sake and eventually took his own life. But this episode just kind of is amazing because it was the first exposure to him as a historical figure that I had, and it kind of exposed him as as the genius that he is, and it is just a fantastic episode. I love it. It is just brilliant. There is not much more you can say. It's one of the best episodes of Doctor Who ever, and my dad doesn't really like Doctor Who that much, but I remember when we watched it for the first time, when it aired, he cried. And I think a lot of people have cried when they see that, and it's such a powerful episode, and that's where it ranks high for me. Next on this list, I have just realised I haven't done this in chronological order, because there's a two-parter in Series 5 which I haven't mentioned, which is on this list, and that is The Time of Angels and Flesh and Stone. I think this two-parter is brilliant. I think it's so clever in the way that it brings back the Weeping Angels and does something different with them, because obviously Blink, it's very hard to recreate Blink because it's Dr. Light's story, and that's why it works so much, because you kind of feel helpless the whole time, because realistically the angels have already beaten the Doctor. The Doctor has lost at this point, which adds to the tension of the story. But without that, you have this story where the Doctor is in control. So how do you change it? You make it, the whole first part, they think it's just one angel, and then suddenly they realise, oh no, there's a whole army of angels and it's a trap. That is fantastic. And the way that in 45 minutes, there's not many interactions with the angel. A lot of it is just walking around, building tension. And yet you can't really keep your eyes off of the episode still. That's brilliant from Moffat, the way that that still works. Because realistically, if you say on paper what happens in 45 minutes of the episode, you go, how the hell is that 45 minutes? Well, it just really works with these little moments of tension, these little moments, obviously, with the angel coming out of the TV, and then, slowly but surely building up what happens in Flesh and Stone, with like the dust coming out of Amy's eye, and, slowly cutting to all the angel from the ship killing the soldiers one by one, and building the tension until the reveal that all the angels are around them at the end of the episode. And the cliffhanger is perfect. I think it's such an amazing moment. It was ruined a little bit by Graham Norton on the first airing, and it annoyed me as a kid as well, but no matter, it's still a fantastic story. And then part two just transforms the story, because it's not the same episode. I've heard people say this before with the way RTD and Moffat treat two-parters, and I don't know, Russell T Davies kind of looks at two-parters as the conclusion of the story, and kind of what happens, he carries on, whereas Moffat uses a two-parter as a way to kind of switch up the episode completely, and it kind of changes the episode. And part two is a different episode, it's a different setting, it's all on the ship. You're suddenly in this what's it called, like some sort of techno forest inside of the ship, which is amazing, which, you know, is supplying all the oxygen and stuff. And then suddenly, it's because it's kind of getting to the middle point of the series, the crack is back, but this time the Doctor's aware that it's there, and it plays a major part in the episode. And it also drip feeds information about the crack, and you learn more about it. That is amazing. And the way it works is very natural, and also it slowly drip feeds information about River. You find out that River is in prison and she killed a man, you know that. And of course I feel like it was the Doctor. My first thought was it was the Doctor. It was. But, you know, it's nice to kind of not know that for sure. And just also the way the Doctor defeats the Angels is great, because we already have the information that the gravity is going to run out. As soon as the episode starts, they go, what happens if the gravity fails? We'll all plunge to our deaths. And then at the end of the episode, they go, oh, the gravity's about to fail. That's how we're going to win. And it's such a, because we have all, it's not like Deus Ex Machina, because it's more like Chekhov's gun. We have all the information we have. We have the information that the crack's going to kill them, and we have the information that the gravity's going to fail throughout the episode pretty much, and they combine to destroy the Angels, and that's perfect. The Angels moving isn't something I'm a complete fan of on screen, but hey, let's just deal with it. I think the story as a whole is wonderful. Giving the Angels a voice is something which I wasn't in favour of, but I think it works in the concept that they are speaking through someone, and the way they are speaking through Bob is so horrifying. You know, the fact that these Angels don't zap you back in time because they don't need to for energy. They will just kill you for the sake of it. That is insane, because they don't need you alive. That is just brilliant. And it's just Moffat at his best. You know, just it's horrifying the way the Angels act, because they have such malicious intent in this episode. And it's creepy the way they like laugh at times, and the way they are just revealing their kind of point of view makes them more sinister, I think, and it's just amazing, this story. And it's 100% in my top 5 for me. Finally, the episode which completes the best list for this video for me is A Christmas Carol. I think this episode is beautiful. I've talked about it before. I think it's probably the best, if not like second best, third best. It's one of the best Christmas specials we've ever had. I think it's very Christmassy in what it tries to do, and I love how it's one of the best Christmas Carol adaptations we ever had, because instead of it just doing a Christmas Carol, it is a character doing a Christmas Carol for plot reasons. The Doctor is aware of Christmas Carol as a story and uses it as a way to save the day, and it's and that is brilliant. And the love story within it is so sad in that, you know, I forget the character's name, but the woman in the story is, you know, she's only got like a certain amount of days to live, and you know, that's why he ends up still aging badly, because she's left with 1 day left, and he can never bear himself to live that day with her, and he just wants to keep her alive in her kind of frozen state forever, because he can't bear to lose her. And then finally, when the plot is resolved, he brings her back for that final adventure with them, and that is just amazing. And it's such a fun episode, which is what Christmas episodes should be, but it also is emotional with those moments, like I said. And I like how like just after series 5, there are companions, and they decide, no, we're not going to make the companions really have a big role in this episode. They're kind of barely in it, and I think it works. I think Matt Smith is really in his element throughout this story, and the way that it again flips the Christmas Carol kind of in your head, because when you've seen Ghost of Christmas Past, which is the Doctor in the past, and then Ghost of Christmas Present, which is Amy using a hologram, and then the Ghost of Christmas Future, when the Ghost of Christmas Future is coming, you're expecting the Doctor to show him his future, you know, and you're going, okay, that's what's going to happen. And then the way that, no, it's him showing the young him, the future him, you know, it just flips, and that is insane, because it's, you know, he's realising, no, I am the destination that he's going to become, and he doesn't like what he's going to turn into, and that really does work. And yeah, fantastic, it's amazing. And I'm looking at this list, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, 3 out of 5 in the best list are written by Stephen Moffat, and then in the worst list, I think Let's Kill Hitler is. I think it's Let's Kill Hitler, and yeah, I think it's just Let's Kill Hitler is written by Stephen Moffat. But yeah, I think it's fantastic. I love A Christmas Carol. It's brilliant, and that completes it. And as you know, all of the best list are pretty much series 5. I'm going to count A Christmas Carol as Series 5, but yeah, they kind of all merged together in that era. And that I loved Series 5. 6 and 7 really lose me. So that is it with my Matt Smith era review. It's such a fantastic era at the start, and I don't really like how it continues, but I can't deny the quality of episodes in here. There are some good episodes in Series 6 which I considered, such as The Doctor's Wife and The God Complex. I really like The God Complex, but I thought they just got pipped by certain stories. Time of Angels Flesh and Stone was a late addition. Originally, I also had The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon as well. That two-parter was originally in here, and that got moved out for A Christmas Carol. But I love everything in the best list, and then the worst list. Yeah, there was no other considerations. They are the worst stories, I think, in this era, in my opinion. I also don't like things like Time of the Doctor. I know people will complain that I didn't use Day of the Doctor in here, but to me, because of how it's, you know, an anniversary special, you know, this would be in the best list no matter who was the Doctor running at the time. You know, I'm not going to give Matt Smith credit for the fact that he was the Doctor during the 50th anniversary, and it benefits a lot from the 10th Doctor being in it, from John Hurt being in it. Yeah, so I'm not going to count it in that. It kind of exists outside of the Matt Smith era, is what I'd say. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like. That would really help me out. Comment below what you think and what your opinions on the Matt Smith era. Do you like it more than me? Do you hate it more than me? I wouldn't say hate. I just kind of love it at the beginning and just dislike it towards the end. But comment below what you think about the Matt Smith era. Subscribe if you're not already. I'm really going with that. The amount of subscribers I've gained recently, that's been really cool. But hopefully we can keep these numbers keep coming up, because that will just motivate me to just do more and more content. And yeah, ding the bell for notifications as well, so every time I upload you'll be notified. But that is all, and yeah, I've been the Bored Whovian. I'll see you around.